The Pareto principle, commonly known as the 80-20 rule, says that 80% of consequences come from 20% of the causes. I mean, this is a pretty insane idea when you think about it, but it applies everywhere. Pareto first noticed that 20% of his pea pods in his garden produced 80% of the peas. But furthermore, 20% of people hold 80% of the wealth, 20% of criminals commit 80% of the crimes, and 20% of the words account for 80% of what we say. But of course, 20% of our efforts cause 80% of our results. Now, that last one is what I want you to keep in mind when going throughout this video. The Pareto principle is massive for improvement in any field because if we sit and spend our effort on the 80% of things that will only get us 20% of our results, we will improve so slowly compared to fixing the most important things that will net us massive improvements. This slow improvement is going to drive you insane when trying to improve on League because it feels like we can give so much energy and time and yet see hardly any improvement. My goal today is to help you all in understanding the type of things that we should be focusing on. What are those 20%ers that will get you 80% of your results and steer you away from all of those other things that really only become relevant once you need to squeeze every little bit out of your gameplay? I would bet that a very large majority of you do not need to focus on those little things yet. 80% of you, maybe. So let's begin by talking about some of the traps that people fall into when trying to improve in League that is going to get them very little results. The most common traps that I see many people obsess about are builds, runes, and champions. These are all things people like to point out as important to being able to win because they require no skill. Buying items, selecting runes, and selecting a champion can all be immediately performed by literally anyone. If I just pick this champion instead, I would win. If I just went this build or these runes, I would have won the game. If you want to be real, this is bullshit. We can apply the Pareto principle here too. 80% of your LP will come from 20% of the champions you play. So why not just hyper focus on a very select few champions that you can really perfect so that they can get you even more wins? Build, runes, and champion choice may give you a slight advantage in some scenarios, but they only work if you actually understand how they work and can pilot them at a competent level. So all of those things may actually just end up giving you negative results rather than positive ones. I promise you that if you just pick one or two champions and copy the builds and runes from top players, you will be set to get very, very high elo. That's literally all you need to do, just copy them. I think another common area for people focusing on the least important things is the late game. People, for whatever reason, get very attached to their late game decisions and macro game, and put so much emphasis on that as the reason for the game's outcome. Now, to help explain this point, I want you to think of a League game like a branching tree. The amount of possibilities at the beginning of the game are fairly low, and that represents the root of our tree. The amount of possibilities in the late game are super high, and that represents the top of our tree. Every time something happens in a game, it's like we're taking a different branch up the tree. Why are we trying to optimize or refine one of these nodes at the top of the tree when we could be fixing one of the bottom nodes that will have positive impacts throughout the entire tree? Most of your 20%ers are going to be found in this bottom area, which would be the equivalent of the early to mid game. The late game scenarios that come up in your games are not likely to present themselves frequently in your future games because the probability that you take a similar branch up the tree to the same spot is not very high. Especially if you refine your early game and set yourself up for success early on, all of the late game decisions that you're trying to improve and refine won't even come up because you would have taken a completely different branch up the tree that already gives you a way greater chance of winning and makes winning easier. I also want to mention that the 80-20 rule only works for the things that are in your control. The entire point of understanding the 80-20 rule is all about making sure that you're spending your time on the right things that will get you the most results. And everything that you're worrying about that's outside of your control, by definition, is a waste of time to focus on. So if you want to optimize your learning, you need to be able to block out all of the externals. There is no direct answer as to what the 20%ers are going to be for you. Each champion and role will have slightly different things that will provide a larger impact on your games. But instead of figuring out how you could have out-macroed the enemy at 47 minutes into the game, maybe let's start with figuring out how you could have avoided the level 3 gank that you died to. Or maybe let's figure out how we could have responded to the invade at minute 7. Or maybe let's figure out how we could win this river skirmish at the first dragon. These are the 20%ers that matter so much in getting massive improvements, yet there will still be plenty of people that obsess over the minuscule things. And I understand that it can be hard to actually know what the 20%ers are and not get distracted by the other things. But if you continue to practice and pay most of your attention to mistakes early on in the game, I think that you'll be doing just fine. The point of 80/20 is being effective and making the most of your time. I recently read The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss, and there was a very strong and interesting point he made about efficiency versus effectiveness. Efficiency is how quick you can do something. Effectiveness is how much impact that thing has. Generally, people want more time, and they think the way to get more time is to do things more efficiently. But this isn't actually going to net you a substantial amount of time if the things you are optimizing are not effective. If you would just instead did a more effective task, then you would clear up way more time. Making an ineffective task more efficient doesn't make it any more effective. You're just doing nothing faster. We all want an easy shortcut to improvement in everything that we do. We want to find the perfect easy exercise that will get us jacked in a month. We want the perfect thing to do or sell that will make us millions of dollars. And we all want the one tip that will make us reach our dream rank in League of Legends. But quite frankly, these things just don't exist. And they definitely don't exist in any easy form. All forms of improvement take time and hard work, but the trap we fall into is believing the people that are selling us an idea that all we have to do is follow their simple advice and all of our wildest dreams will come true. Usually what they're selling you is not going to get you the results that it promises. It's usually an 80%er that results in small improvements, if any. The true growth lies in the hard work that you put into the 20%ers. I want to make it clear that I'm not selling you some fantasy about how you can go from so little to get so many results. I'm telling you that if you put all of your full, dedicated attention, energy, and efforts into solving the most important 20% of your problems, you can resolve 80% of your issues. The 80/20 rule applies basically everywhere, and I think that it's a really good idea to reflect and think of all of the things that it may be worth for you to cut out of your routine so you have more time to focus on the things that matter most. What 20% of your time causes 80% of your happiness and satisfaction? And how can you go about maximizing that? Inversely, what 20% of your time causes you 80% of your headaches or frustration? How can you go about cutting out most or all of that time? What 20% of people in your life produce 80% of your enjoyment and propel you forward? How can you make sure that you properly appreciate and value that? The way Timothy Ferriss suggests going about this is asking yourself, if you were forced to cut out 4/5 of your time-consuming activities, what would you remove? We often do things to fill our time that we deem as efficient just so that we can feel productive. But truly ask yourself if what you're doing is just to fill time and isn't actually giving you valuable progress. I hope that this video has got you guys thinking about how you can be more effective in your league improvement journey and turn your attention towards those 20%ers that will get you the most results. Life is a constant trade-off of what we spend our time on, so make sure that you are giving it to the things that give you the most value. I'm happy to announce that I'm starting to offer coaching. To kick it off, I'm going to be offering 2 free sessions separated by a week to a select 2 or 3 mid laners who are ranked platinum or higher. If you're interested in receiving those free sessions, all the information will be in my Discord, so join through the link in the description for more information on how to apply.